Welcome to Forbidden Files. In December 2005, a team of repossession agents arrived on a tiny Pacific island to collect the last thing of value the country still owned. Not a building, not a bank account, a Boeing 737, the national airline's last plane. They flew it away. 15 years earlier, this same country had held more than $500 million in wealth. More than $500,000 for every man, woman, and child. All of it gone because of bird droppings. This is Nauru, a coral island in the South Pacific, 21 square kilometers in area, roughly the size of a medium airport. The third smallest country on Earth after Vatican City and Monaco, 42 kilometers south of the equator, with no near neighbors and no way out except by plane or boat. And for a brief, extraordinary period, the richest country on Earth. The wealth came from something that took millions of years to create. For millennia, Nauru was a stopping point for vast numbers of seabirds crossing the Pacific. Their droppings, guano, accumulated on the island's raised coral plateau, layer upon layer, over millions of years, compressed, mineralized, transformed into some of the purest phosphate rock ever found on a small island. A 20-meter-deep deposit of fertilizer sitting just below the surface, worth almost nothing to the people who had lived on the island for 3,000 years, worth an extraordinary amount to the industrializing world that was running out of farmland. In 1906, German administrators discovered what lay beneath Nauru's soil. Mining began almost immediately. The Germans did not ask the Nauruans for permission. They did not share the profits. They simply began digging, removing the topsoil, exposing the phosphate beneath, and shipping it to fertilizer factories across the world. Then World War I arrived. Australian troops occupied Nauru. Then the Japanese invaded in World War II, enslaving two-thirds of the island's population. By the time Nauru gained independence in 1968, it had been colonized, mined, and occupied by 3 foreign powers. And it was sitting on one of the most valuable deposits of fertilizer left on Earth. Independence changed everything. The Nauruan government took control of phosphate operations, and the money, which had previously flowed to colonial powers, began flowing to the island itself. Global phosphate prices were rising. Demand from Australia, New Zealand, and Japan was enormous. Nauru had something the world desperately needed, and now, for the first time, it was going to be paid properly for it. By the mid-1970s, Nauru had the second highest GDP per capita on Earth after Saudi Arabia. In 1975, a country of roughly 7,000 people had a per capita GDP of $50,000. By 1981, it had reached $35,000, still double the United States at the time. The Nauruan government provided everything. Free education, free healthcare, free transportation. No taxes, not a single cent. Nauruans who owned land received royalties from the mining operations beneath their feet. Many simply chose not to work. They did not have to. The absurdity of what happened next is almost impossible to convey. Nauruans began buying sports cars. On an island 21 square kilometers in size, with one circular road running around its perimeter. There was nowhere to drive. One police chief purchased a Lamborghini. He discovered after delivery that he could not fit in the front seat. The car sat unused. This was the economic reality of Nauru in the 1980s. Enormous wealth. No idea what to do with it. The government was not entirely reckless. A sovereign wealth fund, the Nauru Phosphate Royalties Trust, was established specifically to invest the phosphate revenues for the future. The theory was sound. Phosphate was finite. Everyone knew that. Invest the money wisely, generate returns, and when the phosphate ran out, the investment income would sustain the island. It was exactly the right idea. The execution was a catastrophe. The trust began investing in real estate. A high-rise tower in Melbourne, Australia, called Nauru House, cost $38.5 million to build. There were hotel investments, luxury properties in Hawaii, Guam, the Philippines, the United States, and the United Kingdom. Aviation investments, a floating cocktail lounge. And then, the most notorious investment in the history of sovereign wealth funds. In 1993, the Trust invested approximately $4 million Australian dollars in a West End musical, a production called Leonardo the Musical, A Portrait of Love, a staging of the romantic life of Leonardo da Vinci, performed in London for audiences that did not come. The show collapsed almost immediately. The $4 million was gone. A Pacific Island nation had lost its future on a musical about a Renaissance painter's love life, and that was just one of dozens of failed investments. While the Trust was losing money on musicals and mismanaged real estate, the phosphate was running out. The deposits that had taken millions of years to form were being exhausted in less than a century. By the early 2000s, meaningful phosphate exports had effectively stopped. By the early 2000s, the island's sole source of income, the one thing that had made all of this possible, was gone. And what was left behind was something out of a nightmare. Approximately 80% of Nauru's land area. Where the phosphate had been, there was now a field of jagged coral pinnacles, sharp, unstable, up to 15 meters tall, with no soil between them. No organic matter, no agriculture, no possibility of rebuilding. Scientists have concluded that meaningful soil regeneration will not occur on any human timescale. The process that created the phosphate took millions of years. It cannot be reversed. The economic collapse was total. The Bank of Nauru failed. The Republic of Nauru Finance Corporation failed. The island's telecommunication system collapsed in 2004. Unemployment reached nearly 90%. The Trust, which had been supposed to cushion this transition, had been so comprehensively mismanaged that it was effectively insolvent. Nauru House in Melbourne was sold to pay debts. The international real estate portfolio was liquidated. One by one, the assets disappeared. And then came December 2005. General Electric held a $236 million Australian dollar loan that the Nauruan government had defaulted on. The Melbourne high-rise was gone. The real estate portfolio was gone. The bank had collapsed. The only remaining liquid asset of a sovereign nation was its last airplane. The repossession agents arrived. The plane flew out. The Nauru's national airline ceased to exist. An island with no way off except by air or sea had just lost its last aircraft. Desperation produced increasingly alarming decisions. Nauru became an offshore banking haven, attracting money from people who did not want it traced. Russian mafia networks used Nauruan banks to launder billions of dollars. The government began selling passports, Nauruan citizenship, to anyone who would pay. Buyers included members of Al-Qaeda. The Financial Action Task Force blacklisted Nauru as a non-cooperative jurisdiction. The offshore banking experiment was shut down under international pressure. Another source of income, gone. In 2001, Australia offered Nauru a lifeline of a kind. In exchange for millions of dollars in aid, Nauru would house asylum seekers, people trying to reach Australia by boat, in a detention center on the island. The arrangement was called the Pacific Solution. Critics called it something else. Nauru, which had once been one of the wealthiest places on Earth, was now earning money by imprisoning other people's refugees. The detention center has been criticized for overcrowding, poor sanitation, and human rights abuses. It has been associated with 14 detainee deaths and multiple suicide attempts. It is still operating today. Today, Nauru's population of approximately 10,000 people lives on a narrow ring of land along the coast, the only habitable part of an island that is 80% destroyed. The interior, the topside, is a field of jagged limestone that will not support life for thousands of years. The country has the highest obesity rate in the world, a direct consequence of the shift from traditional foods to imported processed goods that happened during the wealth years and never reversed. The average life expectancy is among the lowest in the Pacific. The economy is effectively propped up by Australian aid and the detention center. Nauru's story has a name in economics: the resource curse. The phenomenon where countries rich in a single natural resource fail to develop sustainable economies and end up worse off than if the resource had never been found. It has happened in Angola with oil, in Sierra Leone with diamonds, in Venezuela with petroleum. The pattern is almost always the same: sudden wealth, failure to diversify, resource exhaustion, collapse. Nauru simply experienced it faster, more completely, and more visibly than almost anywhere else. Because the island was so small, there was nowhere to hide. There is one remaining hope. The ocean floor around Nauru contains deposits of polymetallic nodules, the same deep-sea minerals that Howard Hughes once pretended to mine as cover for a CIA operation. Nauru has been one of the most aggressive advocates for deep-sea mining rights in international negotiations. In 2021, Nauru triggered a provision in international law requiring the International Seabed Authority to finalize deep-sea mining regulations, accelerating a process that much of the scientific community believes is moving too fast. A country that destroyed its own island to mine what was on it is now pushing to mine what lies beneath the ocean around it. The pattern, some observers note, is familiar: an island the size of a medium airport. 3,000 years of human civilization. Colonized, occupied, and mined by foreign powers for a century. Then handed control of the greatest per capita windfall in history, all because of bird droppings. And the decisions made about what to do with them. End pause illumined. Nauru had everything. It spent it on sports cars, a Leonardo da Vinci musical, and bad real estate. And when the money ran out, the island itself was already gone. The richest country on Earth became one of the poorest in less than a generation. There are dozens of stories like this one that most people never hear. Subscribe and we'll keep finding them. The next file is already open.